Hello everyone, so welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be talking about guard positions and what you can do from them. So we're going to be following German lineage when it comes to this, and without further ado we're going to start with all the basic ones. I will explain a little bit about them, what I think they can be useful for, and essentially some notes about all of them. So we're going to start with the most popular position that you're going to most likely see, which is called the Vom Tag. So Vom Tag is generally placed somewhere at the height of your shoulder with your true edge looking towards the opponent. Now, there are various descriptions of Vom Tag throughout history, and basically in some cases you will find that this is Vom Tag, or this is Vom Tag, or this is Vom Tag, or this is Vom Tag. And in case, for example, of Wadi, you will also see that this is Vom Tag. Now, Vom Tag roughly translates from German to English like from day, because Vom, from, and Tag, day. So generally the idea is that anything that comes from above is, from the day, so above the horizon, and basically I think you can treat it as such. So essentially anything that comes from above your waist upwards, no matter where it's placed, is going to be Vom Tag. But for all intents and purposes, I prefer calling this Vom Tag. So I think it's the most convenient out of all the positions without having put you in any kind of extreme, such as this one, leaving your torso open and all that, so you have to travel all the way down in order to defend or to attack. And also this one, while it also has its uses, it's a little bit low, so oftentimes it might leave you a little bit more unprotected towards thrusts to the masks or shoulders or the upper chest. Now, the thing to note about Vom Tag is that most often from it you will strike using Oberhaus, so the overcuts, such as this, okay? Or you're going to turn it into a Schilhau, which is a strike with the false edge, such as this. And oftentimes you can also go more downwards, meaning that you can go into a Mittelhau or you can go into an Unterhau. While these last two options are available to you, I would never suggest really leading with them because they make a big move. So for example, from here to here with an Oberhau, it's a very quick attack and very straightforward. But for example, if you start going to Mittelhau, or if you start going to Unterhau, you see there is a very big wind-up from your sword going away from the center line, down or to the side, and then going back in. So if you're in a distance, your opponent will most likely use this just to thrust forward towards you. Another note is that from Oberhau, we can also kind of use the Zorn, which is this position. It's not exactly Vom Tag, but it is still. So anyways, in this case, we want to cut through the center line and offset the opponent's blade. So essentially, this is mostly covered by attack. So anytime you start from a Vom Tag, you're essentially kind of aiming with your cuts, not necessarily to end up on this side of the cut. So if your Vom Tag is on your right shoulder, you don't really want to end up on the left side of the opponent, because you see this leaves the center line very vulnerable. So you would like to end up in these positions. So of course, if your opponent is also right-handed, because their blade will be on this side, so the moment you engage, you will also be able to protect yourself from the opponent's blade. If the opponent is left-handed, then the opposite will hold true. You will most likely want to strike from Vom Tag into linke Oberhaus, so the left Oberhaus, which is going to be this direction. So you're going to be trying to cover this line if the opponent is left-handed. Okay, so that's it about Vom Tag. So now I'm going to go to the second most popular position, which is going to be Langort. Now, Langort means long point, and it's with the blade directly in front of you. And essentially, the blade should be centered, well, the pommel should be looking somewhere within your lower solar plexus or somewhere at your belly button. The big thing that most people make a mistake of is they don't point it correctly. So when you point a Langort, you want to point it somewhere to the opponent's chin or neck or upper torso here, or to the collarbone, let's say. And the reason why you want to do this is because if you want to go for a thrust, you want your point to already be online and looking there, so that you can, just extend your hands and travel very, very fast. Now, what most beginners make a mistake of is they enter Langort something like this or something like this, so they start going into a fight and they move around and then they end up here. So you see, from this position, if I push upwards, I'm most likely missing my opponent if he's right in front of me. But you see, from this position, I'm free to proceed straight forward in the shortest possible manner towards my opponent. Now, there are also two forms of Langort. So one is with a flat looking down, which is this, or also called the thumb Langort, because you place your thumb here to the base of the blade or to the shield, and you extend it like this. This is a very convenient position for parrying, because it allows you with minimal movements to offset the opponent's blade to the side, or to return to the parries if you need it, okay? Now, the other position is Langort with the edge down. Now, Langort with the edge down is much better if you're looking to bind the opponent's blade, because from here, if you try to bind, it's not that it will not be impossible, but most likely you will be dispersing a lot of pressure across the flat of your blade. While if you start binding with the edge, you are going to have a much better time, because you are going to be able to offer more pressure going forward to offset the blade. And basically you will have better control of it. Another thing is that it allows you to more sharply intercut into the opponent's Langort. So it's very good, for example, when facing another Langort. So if a person is in a Langort, it's a very good idea to enter into this type of Langort and then to look to go across their sword and then try to thrust them. These are my notes on Langort. I would only suggest another thing is that when you are in Langort, don't extend your hands too much. Keep them relatively close to your body, because if you do this too much, it's going to open you from cut to the hands from below, because you're essentially offering a tempo or a movement for no reason. Not that you should never do this, but be mindful of when you're doing it so that you don't give away your hands for free. Let's see, next positions from here, I think it would be good to introduce the Pflug, since we already mentioned Langort in this position. So Pflug, or the plow, is these positions. So they're kind of to the side of your body, like this, or like this. And the main thing with Pflug is that you want them to look a little bit like a triangle. So you want them to make like a tip somewhere on the opposite side of the opponent's body. So for example, if my Pflug is to my left, I want it to point to the opponent's left. And if my Pflug is to the right, I want it to point to the opponent's right shoulder. Now, why is this? Well, this is also because of what I previously said with Langort. So Pflug is very good for thrusts and for essentially overbinding Langort in the middle. So what this offers you, it offers you a sneaky angle. So once you touch the opponent's blade from Pflug, you only have to extend your hand, and as you see, you will end up on the opposite side of where you started, which will mean that you are protected now against an attack by a sword. So left Pflug is particularly good against left-handers if you're right-handed, and right Pflug is particularly good against right-handers, because if somebody's blade is on this side of their body, and again I go and overbind and I shoot my blade to this side, as you can see, again my sword is in the way to protect me. Okay, so this is the biggest note about Pflug. And again, something to be mindful of is when you enter Pflug, don't enter Pflug like this. So again, this will open up your center line, and essentially you won't be able to do much with it. Essentially, it will not do the job it's designed to do. So if you're going to do something like this, it's already better that then you're probably here in the Langort already to the side a little bit, if you want to bait your opponent or something like that. Let's see, next one. Okay, so from Pflug, we are going to go into an Ochs. So this is going to be the left Ochs, and this is going to be the right Ochs. Now, the biggest tip that I have for going into Ochs is that imagine that you have a watch here on your hand, or on this hand, depending on which one you're going to be going for. And as you see, for example, if I raise into an Ochs, I want to take a look at my watch, like what's the time, okay? Same from the opposite side, so if you see, like I'm going up, and I take a look at the time, that's here, and I end up in an Ochs, okay? Now, another thing with an Ochs is that it can be very offensive, so you can push the blade all the way forward. And again, it's good if it's not, again, to the side, but if it's like crossed a little bit, exactly like Pflug, because it's going to offer you protection to your head, and you're going to be able to catch the opponent's blade for counter cuts if the cuts are coming from above. Same thing goes from the opposite side, so you want to look a little bit to the opponent's, if your blade is on the right, you want to look to the opponent's right, and again, if the opponent gives you a cut, you're going to be able to step offline easily and make a counter cut. But this is not everything that Ochs is useful. So as you see, Ochs is already above your head, so it's a very good guard to use against people that are taller and that prefer to cut from above at you. So it's going to allow you to protect your head, especially if you squat down a little bit. Another thing is that it can offer you a good attacking position. So for example, if the opponent is moving, for example, from Langort to Vom Tag a lot, and in the moment that they move to Vom Tag, you can essentially attack them with a step forward and your blade already raised above. Most likely, what's going to happen is people tend to panic, they tend to give a cut immediately, and the moment they give you a cut, you're going to be able to transfer the force and give a counter cut. So it's essentially a very safe way to charge somebody whose blade is going to come from above. Now, be mindful though, if your opponent is suicidal and you rush at them like this, they may still decide to do something like this. For example, like a mittelhau to your sides or trying to get to your arms. This is a very suicidal move, and there is not much you can do about it except, if you notice them going low, to switch the blade down. And the fastest way to do this is that essentially you're not pulling the blade down, but what you're doing is you're going to press on whichever hand is on the pommel, and you're going to pull the pommel down. Okay, so same is going to be on this side, but on this side it's a little bit more difficult. If you're right-handed, your right side will be crossed. If you're left-handed, your left side will be crossed. So from a cross position, pulling the guard down is not as easy or as comfortable, but it's still doable. And again, it's mostly something that you have to be mindful of. And yes, and the last position we're going to cover for today is going to be Alber. Now, Alber is generally looking downwards, and also Alber means fool. Now, it has the kind of two interpretations to it, because a master of old said that whoever uses a fool guard either has no idea what he's doing or he knows exactly what he's doing. So somebody's going to be a fool, either them or you, and hopefully it's going to be them. Now, notes about Alber. So, things that people often make a mistake. So they tend to touch the tip to the ground. Don't touch the tip to the ground. So this is too far away down, and you have to travel all the way up in order to be able to use the blade. No, it's kind of like Langort, but pointed down, somewhere about here. Okay. A good thing about Alber is that it allows you to conceal distance a little bit. So it's not as much in your face as, for example, Langort is. So it tends to make people more relaxed, and it allows you to kind of catch them off guard a little bit more easily. Mostly beginner to intermediate fencers, like anybody who is above that should already, know in which distance Alber works in, and they won't be so easy to trick, but, still you might catch them off guard at some point. So, don't tip it all the way to the ground, okay? Have it somewhere here, and so what does Alber do? Alber allows you to very quickly from below cut upwards. And if you remember what I mentioned with Langort, essentially not extending forward for no reason, or not pushing it like this, it's because if your opponent does this and we're also in a Langort with them, we can just go from below kind of into an Alber and then cut up towards their hands. Of course, you can already do this from below, and also you should be able to switch angles with Alber. So don't be afraid of thinking that Alber also only has to be in the middle. No, it can also be a little bit to the side. I think in Fiore this is called dente di cinghiale, which means boar tusk. So, and while the one from below is most useful for snapping up and to hit the hands, or essentially what you do is you pull the pommel and the blade is going to come up very fast. The ones to the side, I find them a little bit better for deflecting. So for example, from these positions, you can very easily kind of cut upwards in the opposite direction, either this or this, and you can use them to deflect incoming cuts. So for example, if the opponent is cutting from this side, I can step to the side, raise the blade this way, and now their blade will be located here. And I'm going to be already like in a good cover position, and from here, you will be able to strike towards your opponent, essentially bypassing the blade. So I find Alber to be very useful for that. Anything else? No, I don't believe so. I think this will be everything for today's class. So thank you very much for listening and paying attention, and I hope this will be helpful to you all. Have a great day.